And now, the general weather around Alaska.
Good evening, I'm David Kramer with Alaska Weather. As always, please visit our website, weather.gov/Alaska. Get updates to the forecast or check out any watches, warnings, or advisories that we might have out for your area. Also call our weather info line, 1-855-937-4977. Get updates to the forecast through that means as well. Starting off today, we want to take a quick look at our fire weather update. We are looking at cool and damp weather continuing to moderate fire potential in western Alaska and south central. For eastern interior and Copper River Basin, we expect to remain mostly warm and dry. And then for Yukon Flats and Delta Junction, they do have the driest fuels there. For our outlook, we're looking at periodic showers to keep even the eastern interior forest fuels moderated. And Alaska's slow fire season, we do expect that to continue. Taking a look now at our fire danger map, most of the concern is in the central and southeastern interior, as well as up into the Yukon Flats area, where we do have some high fire danger expected, with the highest being in that Delta Junction area, as we saw on the previous fire update slide. Taking a look now at our satellite imagery, we're going to watch one system moving into the west coast that's bringing quite a bit of rainfall to western Alaska. And we do have some higher cloud cover here that's bringing some rainfall along the eastern border of mainland Alaska. We can see now for the weather for the remainder of today, we do have rain extending in from the Kaktovik area all throughout the eastern interior and then down to the Cordova area. Down in the Panhandle, we are expecting to remain dry, and we're going to have an area of dry between the precip that we have it over the eastern portion of the state and our frontal system that's pushing in more rain into the state from the west. That's going to be for the central interior, down through the Cook Inlet area, and down into Kodiak as well. Arctic coastline still relatively dry, but there is quite a bit of rainfall moving into the Brooks Range and some areas of the southern portions of the North Slope. But our frontal system is the main feature here. That's bringing rainfall all the way down that northwestern portion of the state through the west coast down to the Bristol Bay area. Behind this system, we are seeing some rain out over the southern portions of the Bering Sea, as well as in the Aleutian Islands and Alaska Peninsula. Looking into tonight, our weaker low is starting to push into the southern portions of the Bering Sea, bringing continued rainfall through the Bering and Aleutian Islands, as well as out by the Alaska Peninsula. Our other low is starting to diminish, but still pushing rain farther into mainland Alaska. So not only will we have the rain throughout the west coast, but that's also going to push into the central interior, cover all of the Brooks Range and the Arctic coastline. Down in south central, still some pockets of drier conditions down in the Cook Inlet area, as well as remaining at Kodiak Island. But Prince William Sound and places farther to the east, we do expect that rainfall to move in. And then down in the Panhandle area, still seeing dry conditions for southeast Alaska. On Friday, still primarily dry in southeast, some showers up in the coastal mountains, but for the most part along the North Gulf Coast, fairly dry, and some pockets of drier air for south central Alaska, but starting to see that rain push in more fully throughout the state on Friday. We're seeing our low has started to really extend out here and bringing more rain to the northern portions of the state through the interior west coast down into the Alaska Peninsula. Our other weaker low pushing slowly through the Bering Sea, moving towards the eastern Bering now, right over the Pribilof Islands, still bringing rainfall to the Aleutian Islands and into the Alaska Peninsula. As we step into Saturday, that's going to clear up quite a bit for the Aleutians, just some lighter showers continuing. We'll have reinforcement of our other low, starting to bring in some heavier rainfall to some of the areas around south central Alaska. And you can see our southerly winds pushing up into the Cook Inlet area. That's going to bring some heavy rainfall and the potential for flooding later on Saturday to the western portions of the Kenai Peninsula, as well as the western areas of the Susitna Valley. Otherwise, around mainland Alaska, we are going to see widespread rain through the west coast, up in through the interior, up into the Brooks Range, with some lighter precipitation up along the North Slope area. And finally, on Saturday, we have rain returning into the Panhandle area, starting to diminish those chances for the drier conditions that they've seen through the end of the week. For our temperatures, starting with our lows on Friday morning for the Panhandle, we are expecting for most locations to drop down near 50 degrees. Some places like Sitka are going to stay more in the mid-50s. Out over south central Alaska, dropping down into the lower to mid-50s. As we move into our highs for Friday afternoon, getting up into the lower to mid-60s for much of south central. Interior locations getting warmer, Glen Allen getting all the way up to 78. For the Panhandle area, temperatures getting up into the mid to upper 60s for more of the southern locations, a little bit warmer as we get farther to north, mid 70s for Juneau and up by the Haines and Skagway areas. Saturday morning low temperatures for the Panhandle dropping down to the mid to lower 50s. And then for South Central Alaska, pretty similar conditions, lower to mid 50s there. Saturday afternoon highs get up into the upper 50s around Kenai Peninsula and the 60s as we get farther to the north and 70s in the Copper River Basin. For the Panhandle area, getting up into near 70 degrees for areas farther away from the Gulf, but as we get to more southern locations and out by the Gulf of Alaska in the 60s there. Moving up into the interior, temperatures dropping down into the mid 50s for Friday morning. Dropping down into the lower 30s to near 40 for much of the Arctic coastline, a little bit warmer as we get farther to the west. And then along the west coast of the state, dropping down into the mid 40s. Friday afternoon highs getting back up to around 50 degrees with some places like Kotzebue getting up into the mid 50s. Up along the Arctic coastline, we're going to get up into the mid 40s for the most part. And then in the interior, we have temperatures rising into the lower 60s in the western interior and near 70 degrees as we get to the east. Saturday morning going to drop down in the mid 50s in the eastern interior, lower 50s for the western interior, down into the 30s for much of the Arctic coast, and then down into the 40s for much of the west coast of the state. Saturday afternoon highs getting up to the mid 50s for much of the west coast, 40s for St. Lawrence Island, getting up into the 40s for the majority of the Arctic coastline. Utqiagvik only getting up into 35 range, and then down in the interior into the lower 60s for the western interior and near 70 for much of the eastern interior. But as we get out by Eagle, we are going to get warmer temperatures there up to as high as 78. For the southwestern areas of the state, we're going to drop down into the mid 40s Friday morning for the YK Delta area, near 50 for Bristol Bay as well as for the Alaska Peninsula. For the Aleutian Islands, dropping down most locations in the mid 40s to near 50, and then in the mid 40s for the Pribilof Islands. Friday afternoon highs getting up into the mid 50s for much of the Aleutian Islands as well as the Pribilof Islands, near 60 degrees for the Alaska Peninsula and then the lower 60s for Bristol Bay area, mid 50s to near 60 for the YK Delta, cooler as we get closer towards the water. Saturday morning, lows going to drop down to near 50 degrees for much of the YK Delta area. Once again, colder as we get closer towards the water. Lower 50s for the Bristol Bay area, near 50 degrees for the Alaska Peninsula, and dropping down into the mid to upper 40s for the Aleutian Islands as well as the Pribilof Islands. Saturday afternoon highs getting up to the mid 50s for Pribilof Islands as well as much of the Aleutian Islands. Mid 50s to upper 50s for the Alaska Peninsula, near 60 degrees for the Bristol Bay area, and mid 50s to near 60 for the YK Delta. Looking out at our climate outlook 6 to 10 day forecast, all of mainland Alaska having higher chances to be above normal. The bullseye over that kind of eastern interior location stretching down into southwest, and some higher chances also for the majority of the northern half of the Panhandle. As we look at our temperature forecast, much of the western states, chances to be near normal. As we get to the eastern portions of the mainland, chances are to see above normal precipitation. That's going to extend down into the Panhandle as well.